Next up, we have a few more SQL keywords to work with, and these are all grouped under the term aggregate functions, which doesn't really suggest how useful they can be. An aggregate or grouping function means it will perform some kind of calculation on a set of data that we describe, but return a single value. Now, what that single value is depends on which aggregate function we use, so let's take a look. Now, we've seen already how we can do a simple select statement like this one, and this will return everything, all our columns, all our rows, whether that's 5 employee rows or 5,000 or 500,000. But what if that number itself was the piece of information I wanted? What if I just wanted to know how many rows are in this table? I don't need anything else, I just want to know how many rows. Well, I can do that by using an aggregate function in SQL called count. And what I'm going to do is just change the select star to select count star. Count everything in the employee table. If I execute this, it will count all the rows and just return a single value, just in this case 547, let's say. Now you could of course use a where clause if you wanted to restrict the results to just counting the number of employee rows that have a salary greater than 5,000. We get a different result. And that is all count will do for you, is just count the number of rows for this particular condition. Now sometimes, however, the count isn't what you want. In the previous video on sorting, I used the example of selecting products and using the order by clause to sort them by, in this case, list price descending. But what if the only reason I was doing that was to find out what the maximum list price was? Well, instead of using this order by descending and looking at the top row, I could instead just do something like this. Select max. And instead of saying select max with the asterisk, saying select max of everything, I'm just focused on one particular column. What's the maximum value of list price in the entire product table? In this case, we'll bring back 699. Well, if we have max for maximum, it's a pretty good guess that we're also going to have min for minimum, and we do. We also have AVG for average. We would add up all the values in the list price column, divide it by the number of rows, and return that single value. And while we've seen count, there's also an option of sum. Sum, instead of counting the rows, will total all the values up. So in this case, with this statement, we're looking for a customer ID equal to 854. It will find all the rows for that customer and then add together all the values in the total due column. And that's one of the great things about working with aggregate functions. They really don't allow an awful lot of complexity. They are going to return a single number. They need to be very straightforward to customize. However, we can take them one step further. So we've seen how we can use the idea of select count star to get the number of rows. We can use it in conjunction with a where clause. In this case, count up the number of rows where color is equal to red, and we'll get some result back. But if I wanted to know not just the count of red products or all products, but I want to know how many red products we have, how many black products we have, silver, gold, and so on, well, I could create multiple statements like this, just changing the where clause every time. But that's not only tedious, it assumes I know ahead of time what all the colors will be, and we might be adding new colors all the time. So what I would like to do is retrieve both the count and the color column from that table, but to group the results by color. Now, I might be tempted to just write something like this, to select the count, comma, and the color column, but this will confuse SQL. It can either give you the single count of all rows, or it can give you all the multiple values in the color column, but it doesn't understand how to give you both at the same time. However, what I can do is add another SQL keyword, which is great for use with aggregate functions, and that is group by. So I'm selecting here to group by color. If we run this SQL query, this is what we're going to get, or something very like this. It will count up all the products for a particular color because we told it to group by color. Now, group by is something that only makes sense with aggregate functions. You don't use group by otherwise. And conversely, on the other side, if you're using an aggregate function, you're pretty much always going to use it by itself unless you use group by, because the most you would ever expect to return from your query is one single value, unless you're using group by to categorize those results.